Hey everybody, it's good to be back. I'd say it's good to see you. I can't actually see you. I am imagining your faces. If you are new and you have not come to Youth Connect before, I'm not imagining your face because I don't know what you look like. Normally, historically, I would have a question that one of you submitted to our question box that I would be answering. I can't. The question box is out of questions. So I'm just going to pick something that I think is interesting to talk about. And hopefully you find it interesting too. If you don't, you can always submit more questions to the question box, and then I can go back to talking about something that you know you're interested in because you're the one who asked the question. But let's get to it. I'm going to start by reading a story from the Bible, from the book of Luke in the Bible. This is a story about Jesus. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and said, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." Now, I don't know about you. That's the end of the story there. Now, I don't know about you guys. I have heard this story a lot throughout my life. Every time I've heard somebody talk about this, I hear the same sort of, when you're like, what's the point? What's the moral? What's the story about? What should we learn from this interaction between Mary and Martha and Jesus? Because you have, these two sisters living in the same house, and Jesus comes into their house, and one of them is in the back working and busy and doing chores, and the other one is sitting at Jesus' feet and listening to Jesus, right? So you're like, and the one focused on the chores is upset, and she wants Jesus to tell her sister to come help her with the chores, and Jesus is like, "No, chill. Mary has chosen what is better." And so every time I hear this explained, it's, the point is like, Martha is like us. She's busy. She's running around trying to get things done, trying to take care of every little detail. She's worrying. She's fretting. She's so focused on her responsibilities and tasks and little details that aren't that important in the big scheme of things. And she's missing that Jesus is in her house with her. And Mary's not. Mary is just soaking Jesus in and everything he has to say. And Martha's missing it. And so the point of the story, if you will, is that we should be more like Mary and less like Martha. Don't be so concerned about controlling every little detail or getting everything done or getting everything perfect first. Just sit in the presence of Jesus and take him in. And that's the most important. The details will get worked out eventually. And the other thing that happens is, I heard this a couple of times, and then even when people would start to talk about this story again, the next time somebody gave a talk on this story, or the next time I came across it in the Bible when I was reading, I already know what the story's about, right? So I don't really pay attention anymore. I skim over it. I kind of tune out when they're talking, because I already get the gist. I already get the point. So I don't really need to pay attention again. And if that was true, if that was where I was going to end it with you, just don't be so type A. Don't be so strung out on details. Just chill and be with Jesus. Then this would be like the shortest talk I'd ever given. We can't let that happen. So I'd like to divert briefly at this point and tell you about this. There's a great article that I came across a few years ago in a magazine called The Atlantic, which I generally enjoy what they have to say. But this particular article was about travel guides. Travel guides are these guidebooks about, whether you're going to California or Texas or Florida or somewhere in Europe or Asia or Africa or wherever you're traveling to. There's a guidebook that, it says, like, here's all the great places to eat in all the major cities, and here are places to stay, and here are things you should know. And especially important is, things that you should know as a traveler culturally you might not intuitively understand. You might accidentally offend somebody or accidentally cause a problem. So here's some basic tips for navigating social situations in these countries. Because every culture, every place, including our own United States of America, every place has all of these unwritten, unspoken social rules that people just sort of absorb growing up in the culture, but can be baffling or mystifying to a visitor or an outsider. For example, if you were traveling to Iran, you don't give anybody a thumbs up because it does not mean good job. You'd probably see a lot of thumbs up driving, and it's not because everybody's really impressed with everybody else's traffic skills. Or a travel guide to India, might warn you not to try to shake anybody's hand with your left hand and not to, touch anybody's stuff. You're like, hey, I'm Chris. And they're like, put that away. But this article in the Atlantic that I loved was about other countries' travel guides for people who are planning to visit the United States. And I love it. I absolutely love it because there's all of these unspoken rules in the US too that we never think about. And when you hear how other countries try to explain how things go in America, you're like, oh yeah, we do that. We do that. Like there's one thing in one guidebook for people from another country who's like, if you're in America and you're in a restaurant and there's a table with people at it, but there's an empty chair or two at that table, don't go sit with them. Don't just sit at their table and start talking to them and order your own food and expect that to go over well. That's rude in America. And that's not true everywhere in the world. There's a lot of places in the world where if you went into a restaurant and there's 4 people sitting at a 6-person table, you could just sit down with them and order your food at that table too. And then you all talk and you all get to know each other and you have a great dinner and it's awesome. And nobody would think anything of it. But in America, if you and your family are at Olive Garden and there's just that extra chair at the table with you and some rando walks in off the street and sits down in that chair and starts talking to you and ordering their food at your table with you, you're gonna be like, go get your own table. What are you doing? What? There's a great one about if you get invited to a barbecue, your first American barbecue, you should say, can I bring a side dish or a dessert or a beverage? And then it says, and the host will probably say, no, it's okay. We've got it covered. Just come. And it's like, but you could still bring something small anyway, like maybe a bottle of wine or some flowers or something. And then it has a list of things not to bring. And it's like, don't bring cash, pre-prepared, ready-to-eat food, TV dinner, Arby's, toilet paper. And it seems really thoughtful and everybody's like, that is super weird. Okay, yeah, we're not going to set that out though. Thank you though for your contribution. Anyway, cultural norms, we all have them. Every culture has them. And to an outsider looking in, we can completely miss these cultural norms that would completely recontextualize a story. Like, for example, a story about Jesus going to 2 women's house. So again, recap. Jesus and his disciples are traveling. A woman named Martha invites them into her house. Her sister Mary sits at Jesus' feet and is listening while Martha's in the back getting things ready. Martha gets upset, frustrated, comes out, tells Jesus, tell my sister to come back here and help me. And Jesus is like, no, Mary chose what's better. In 1st century Judea, which is the time and place that this story takes place and these people lived, when men would visit someone's house, like Jesus' disciples, when men specifically would come and visit a house, all of the men would gather in sort of a main room. And they would all recline and socialize and talk. And any women, including women who lived at the house, would pull back to smaller rooms in the back. And they would spend all of their time avoiding the men. And they would prepare food and they would prepare drinks, and their only interactions with the men would be to come out and serve them. Here is your meal, here is some more drink, let me take your dishes to the back and clean them for you. And so with just that small piece of cultural context, and I'm not saying that's how it's supposed to be, but that is what was traditional in their culture at their time. Martha is in the back, preparing food, preparing drinks, preparing to serve the men, but otherwise staying out of their space. Martha is doing exactly what is culturally expected of her, exactly what is normal. There's nothing about what Martha's doing. Nobody sitting in the main room is like, man, Martha's being rude, staying back there all this time. Nobody even thought about it. I'm positive it never even crossed anybody's mind, because it was expected that Martha would go in the back and be busy with preparations. That was her role, that was her job, that was... Mary, on the other hand, though, is not doing what she's supposed to do. Mary is this single, unmarried woman in the men's space. And I would bet, based on my understanding of the cultural norms of the time, that it was as uncomfortable as if a complete stranger came up to your table at a restaurant and sat down with you and your family and started talking to you and eating your food. You know, take your salad bowl that you're all sharing and starts helping themselves to your salad. Like, you're just like, you're not supposed to be here. This is not, you're supposed to be somewhere else. Like, why? What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. What if one of us is accidentally, what if one of us accidentally flirts with you or something? So when Martha comes out and she's like, Jesus, don't you care that my sister has left me back there all by myself? Tell her to come help me. Say something about this. This is weird. This is uncomfortable. Stop it. And Jesus is like, no, I'm not gonna. But there's more, because Mary's not just in the men's room. Mary is sitting at Jesus's feet. You didn't have a lot of free time growing up. You know, you never heard about people taking a year off after college to just sort of travel. Like, that was completely unheard of. You had to learn a trade. You had to learn a job so that you could work, so that you could eat, so that you didn't starve to death. As a man. As a woman, you found a husband who had a trade or a job so that he could work, so that you could eat, so that you didn't starve to death. So a carpenter in training would find a carpenter to study under. A fisherman in training would find fishermen to study under. Oftentimes it was their own dads, but circumstances, you know, sometimes your dad's dead. You find somebody, you study under them. And a rabbi, a religious teacher in training, would find another rabbi, would find another religious teacher in training to study under. And the way that they would study under them was to sit at their teacher's feet. So not only is Mary in the men's space, not only is Mary making everyone uncomfortable by being somewhere she's not supposed to be, but Mary has positioned herself as if she was a rabbi in training. She is doing the thing that culturally meant, I want to be a rabbi someday, so I found a rabbi, I want to sit at his feet. I'm going to learn, I'm the student right now. Teach me so I can be a rabbi too. And that, again, culturally, women don't become religious teachers. Women don't become rabbis. In fact, that's the disciples' job. They're supposed to be the ones sitting at Jesus' feet, learning from him, so that they can someday be rabbis, so they can someday be religious teachers like Jesus. Mary, this woman, is acting like it's okay for her to be a rabbi too. And as far as we can tell, Jesus didn't even invite her to do that. She just sat down, like somebody. Again, going to, being at school. You're at school. You're taking a class, and somebody just walks in off the street, plumps their stuff down, sits down in front of the teacher, and is like, "Me too." Really? In fact, make it more uncomfortable. Imagine like a 40-year-old just walks in off the street, plumps their stuff down, and is like, "Teach me math teacher. I want to learn." Everybody's like, "You can't be here. What are you doing? This is not right." Jesus says, "Martha, Martha, you are upset about many things." And I don't know Greek very well, but I have a friend who does know Greek very well, and I was talking to him about this. And he told me that what Jesus is really saying there is, Martha, this is not the only thing that's bothering you. Mary not helping you with the food is not the only thing that's bothering you right now. And he's absolutely right. Martha is bothered that Mary is making everyone else uncomfortable. Martha is bothered that her sister Mary is acting like Mary can do a man's job. Martha is bothered that Mary is enjoying all of these freedoms that probably Martha doesn't think Mary is really allowed to have. Mary is not allowed to be that free. There are limits, there are rules, there are things, there are lines you're not supposed to cross, there are things you're not supposed to say, and things you're not supposed to do, and places you're not supposed to go. And Martha is mad, I think, and I think Jesus is calling it out explicitly. Martha's mad that Mary is trying to enjoy freedoms that Martha doesn't feel she or Mary have any right to have. And probably a lot of the men in the room don't feel like they have the right to have those freedoms either. And they're all uncomfortable. And I have been that Martha. I have been that person who has looked at someone else enjoying more freedom than me and been angry or been frustrated or been envious, and that turns into like disapproval. Like how dare you run off and enjoy freedom that I don't feel like I am allowed to have? How dare you be that free? And Martha is straight up like, Jesus, teacher, tell her she's not allowed to be this free. Tell her she's not allowed to enjoy this much freedom. There are limits. Jesus, please rein her in for all of our sake. And Jesus is like, no, absolutely not. Mary has chosen what's better. So there's this radical message that I think honestly still applies. I think just even just as cultural Christians, we have all of these things that we imagine people aren't allowed to do, all these freedoms we imagine people shouldn't really be allowed to enjoy. And let me be clear here, right? Mary is sitting, right? Jesus is not like all cultural norms are evil. Jesus is not like you can do literally anything you want, I don't care, right? Like Mary's not in there stabbing people. Right? She's not in there like slapping people across the face. I'm not in any way trying to advocate for like no one can ever tell you no about anything ever. But Jesus is offering this radical freedom, not just to the Marys who are willing to come up and take it, but also to the Marthas who do what they're supposed to do and feel a little bit resentful or a lot resentful of people who have more freedom than them. And I think part of what Jesus is saying is, Martha, you could be out here too. You could be here in the men's space too. You don't actually have to go back to the kitchen. If we don't eat, we don't eat. Actually, shoot, I'm Jesus. I can just make food out of thin air. It really doesn't matter. If the thing holding you back from freedom in Christ, from freedom in Jesus, is fear about making somebody else uncomfortable, or fear about what somebody else is going to think, or fear about how it's going to make you look, or fear about whether or not you're going to get in trouble. Like the freedom that Jesus offers you and me and women in a culture where women were told to know their place and sit down and be quiet and stay in the back where we don't see you and we don't have to hear you. The freedom that Jesus offers is so much more than that. And if you are a Martha, not someone just obsessed with getting details right, not just someone who's controlling or fretting or busy or worrying, but if you're someone who sees somebody else enjoying freedom and you don't like that, they need to know their place. They need to settle down and get their head on straight and do what they're supposed to do. Jesus is inviting us instead to enjoy more freedom with him. All right, that was my talk. Thank you for sticking with it. If you made it all the way, thank you so much for listening, and I hope it said something to you. I hope Jesus said something to you. There's freedom. Jesus offers much, 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 much more freedom than I think we realize, and joy to be who he made us to be. So, peace. But not in Iran. Oh, double whammy. Here we go. Left-handed thumbs up. and make some enemies with that one.